I never expected to become the neighborhood eco-warrior, but when Vivian Thornhill slapped a $50,000 fine on my doorstep for installing solar panels, something inside me snapped. Maybe it was the military training, or maybe it was just plain common sense, but I knew right then, this wasn't just about my roof anymore. This was war. The certified letter had arrived on a Tuesday. Dear Mr. Quinn Meyers. It read in that pretentious font Vivian always used for HOA communications. Your unauthorized solar installation constitutes a severe violation of Sunnyside Estates Covenant Section 12.3. The board has unanimously approved a $50,000 remediation fine. Payment expected within 30 days. I nearly choked on my coffee. $50,000? For saving the planet and cutting my electric bill? I'd spent 20 years as an Army engineer, including 3 tours overseas, just to come home and fight battles with clipboard warriors. My solar project had been my first major home improvement since buying this modest 3-bedroom last year after my retirement. Nothing extravagant, just 12 panels on the south-facing slope of my roof. The installation had finished just last week, and I was still admiring how seamlessly they blended with the roofline. I grabbed my phone and called my neighbor, Wendy Harris, who'd warned me about Vivian's iron grip on the neighborhood when I first moved in. They did what? Wendy practically shouted through the phone. Quinn, that's completely insane. Even for Vivian. Tell me about it. I sighed, looking at the notice again. There's nothing in the covenants against solar. I checked before installation. Oh, she probably made it up, Wendy said. Remember when she tried to find the Rodriguez family for their ethnically themed garden gnomes? The gnomes were wearing sombreros. They'd bought them at Target. Wendy wasn't exaggerating. In the year I'd lived here, I'd witnessed Vivian Thornhill, our 50-something HOA president with her perpetually highlighted bob and collection of pastel pantsuits, turn our otherwise pleasant subdivision into her personal fiefdom. Every board meeting was a showcase for her particular brand of control, delivered with a saccharine smile and passive-aggressive commentary. I'll fight this, I told Wendy. I'm not paying a dime. Be careful, she warned. Last guy who challenged her ended up moving. Vivian made his life hell. Daily inspections, fines for grass half an inch too tall. She never forgets a slight. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the absurdity of being penalized for reducing my carbon footprint. Around 2 a.m., I got up and started researching. By sunrise, I had a battle plan and a cup of cold coffee. The next evening was the monthly HOA meeting. I arrived early and took a seat in the front row of the community center meeting room. Vivian noticed me immediately, her thin smile faltering slightly before she adjusted her coral blazer and continued chatting with her loyal second-in-command, Stanley Peters, a retiree who seemed to exist solely to echo Vivian's opinions. At precisely 7 p.m., Vivian called the meeting to order. Before we begin with scheduled business, I said, standing before she could start her usual recitation of neighborhood infractions, I'd like to address the $50,000 fine I received yesterday regarding my solar installation. Vivian's smile tightened. Mr. Meyers, we have an agenda. If you'd like to add an item, there's a process. I believe discussing a $50,000 fine warrants immediate attention, I replied calmly. Several neighbors murmured in agreement. Especially since state law SB 632 explicitly prohibits HOAs from restricting solar installations. The room went silent. Vivian's face flushed. Our covenants clearly state that all exterior modifications require board approval, she countered, her voice rising slightly. You failed to submit proper documentation. I pulled out a folder. Actually, I submitted complete plans 3 months ago. I have the certified mail receipt and a copy of everything I sent. I also have the state statute that says HOAs cannot enforce restrictions that significantly increase the cost of a solar system or decrease its efficiency by more than 10%. Several neighbors were now openly watching with interest. I noticed Phyllis Deacon, who always voted with Vivian, shifting uncomfortably in her seat. Well, Vivian said, clearing her throat, The board determined that your particular installation violates our aesthetic standards, which we are entitled to enforce. Then why does the violation notice cite a covenant section that doesn't exist? I asked. There is no section 12.3 in our bylaws. A low whistle came from somewhere in the back. Vivian's nostrils flared. This meeting isn't the appropriate venue for this discussion, she snapped, banging her gavel. The board has made its decision. If you wish to appeal, you may do so in writing. I've already appealed, to the State Attorney General's office, I replied, keeping my voice level. They were very interested to hear about a $50,000 fine for a legally protected installation. The meeting deteriorated after that. Vivian attempted to move on, but several other homeowners stood up with their own grievances. Gerald Wu questioned why the landscaping budget had tripled while services decreased. Maria Fletcher asked why her fence permit had been denied while board member Stanley's identical fence was approved in 2 days. By the time Vivian gavelled the meeting closed, her face had gone from flushed to ashen. She practically fled the room, Stanley trailing behind her like a lost puppy. That should have been the end of it. Instead, it was just the beginning. The next morning, I found a notice taped to my door. Immediate action required. Daily fine of $1,000 for continued noncompliance will begin tomorrow. My hands shook as I read it. This wasn't just unreasonable, it was vindictive. I called the attorney I'd consulted the day before. They can't do this, Attorney Lisa Ramirez assured me. But Vivian is clearly trying to intimidate you into compliance before your complaint gets traction. Document everything. I did more than document. I started talking to my neighbors, many of whom, it turned out, had their own horror stories. Wendy introduced me to Taylor Johnson, who'd been fined for having a basketball hoop that was 2 inches too tall. Omar Patel had been cited for excessive garden vegetation when he grew tomatoes in his backyard. The thing is, Omar told me over coffee in his kitchen, I think there's more going on than just power tripping. The HOA finances don't add up. Omar, a CPA, had requested financial records last year and received incomplete documentation after months of delays. The budget shows we're paying premium lawn care $6,000 a month, but I called them directly once when my sprinklers broke. They said they only charge us $2,800. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. Where's the rest going? Omar shrugged. That's what I wanted to know. Vivian banned me from asking financial questions after that. I spent the weekend creating a spreadsheet of suspected financial discrepancies based on information from neighbors. On Monday, I filed a formal complaint with the county prosecutor's office alleging potential embezzlement of HOA funds. Tuesday morning, I woke to the sound of someone pounding on my door. It was barely 7 a.m. Mr. Meyers! Vivian stood on my porch, a vein visibly throbbing in her forehead. Behind her stood Stanley and another board member, Ruth Wilson. We need to discuss your continued defiance of board directives. I stepped outside, closing my door behind me. Good morning to you too, Vivian. What can I do for you at this unreasonable hour? You've been spreading malicious rumors about this board, she hissed, undermining the community's trust. We're here to inform you that we've placed a lien on your property for unpaid fines, now totaling $55,000. My heart raced, but I kept my expression neutral. That's interesting, considering the cease and desist letter my attorney sent you yesterday prohibiting any punitive action while my complaint is under investigation. Ruth shifted nervously. What investigation? The one by the county prosecutor's office, I replied. They're looking into the HOA's financial records. All of them. Vivian's face went white. You have no right. Actually, as a homeowner, I have every right, I corrected her. Now, unless you have a warrant, I'd appreciate it if you'd leave my property. This isn't over, Vivian snapped as she turned to leave. She was right about that. Later that day, I received an unexpected call from a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Meyers? This is Detective Carlos Martinez with the County Financial Crimes Unit. We've received your complaint about the Sunnyside Estates HOA. I'd like to ask you some questions. For the next hour, I walked Detective Martinez through everything I'd discovered. By the end, he sounded genuinely concerned. We take allegations of financial mismanagement very seriously, he said. Especially when it involves community funds. I'll be in touch. 3 days later, Wendy called me, her voice breathless with excitement. Quinn! You need to get to the community center right now. The police are here, and they're talking to Vivian. I arrived to find 2 police cruisers parked outside our community center. Through the windows, I could see Vivian seated at a table, flanked by Detective Martinez and a female officer I didn't recognize. She appeared to be crying. Neighbors had gathered on the sidewalk, watching the scene unfold. I spotted Omar and joined him. What's happening? They're executing a search warrant for the HOA financial records, he explained. Apparently, they found some serious discrepancies in the accounts Vivian submitted to the state. Within the hour, we watched in collective shock as Vivian was escorted to a police car, not in handcuffs but clearly under investigation. Stanley followed soon after, his usual bluster replaced by ashen-faced terror. The story came out in pieces over the following days. Detective Martinez called to thank me for my initial complaint, which had triggered a deeper investigation. We've uncovered evidence of systematic embezzlement, he explained. Ms. Thornhill and Mr. Peters created fake vendor contracts, inflated real ones, and pocketed the difference. We're still calculating the total, but it's well over $200,000 over the past 5 years. The revelation sent shockwaves through our community. An emergency meeting was called by the County Housing Authority, which had temporarily assumed control of our HOA operations. Based on the severity of the financial improprieties and the illegal attempt to fine a homeowner for a legally protected solar installation, the county representative explained, we've revoked Sunnyside Estates HOA charter pending reorganization and new elections. The room erupted in applause. People I barely knew were patting me on the back, thanking me for standing up to Vivian. 2 weeks later, Vivian and Stanley were formally charged with embezzlement, fraud, and misappropriation of funds. The story made the local news, with my solar panels featured prominently in the background as the reporter explained how the investigation began. As for the HOA, the county supervised new elections. Omar was elected president, with Wendy as treasurer, both promising transparency and reasonable enforcement of actual rules, not made-up ones. The first act of the new board? Passing a resolution encouraging renewable energy installations throughout the neighborhood. 6 months later, I sat on my back deck with Wendy and Omar, watching the sunset and enjoying the satisfaction of seeing 5 other houses in our neighborhood sporting new solar arrays. You know, Wendy said, raising her glass of iced tea, you should run for city council next year. We could use someone who actually stands up for what's right. I laughed. I think I've had enough of politics for a while. But as I looked around at our transformed community, where neighbors now waved to each other instead of hiding from inspection notices, I felt a sense of pride I hadn't experienced since my military days. Sometimes the most important battles are fought not on foreign soil but right in your own backyard. Last week, I received a letter informing me that Vivian had accepted a plea deal, 3 years probation, full restitution to the HOA, and a lifetime ban from serving on any community board. The solar panels that started it all have been working perfectly, cutting my electric bill by 60%. Every time I look at them gleaming in the sunlight, I can't help but smile. Sometimes doing the right thing costs you, but sometimes it pays dividends you never expected. As for that $50,000 fine, it was officially expunged from all records. Instead, the new HOA used recovered funds to install solar lighting along our neighborhood walking paths, with a small plaque that reads, "Illuminating our community's future, one light at a time." I never set out to be a neighborhood hero or to bring down a corrupt HOA president. I just wanted to put some solar panels on my roof. But I've learned that standing up for what's right, even when it seems easier to give in, can change more than just your electric bill. It can change an entire community. And that's worth more than $50,000 any day,